towards the back of the cabins where you have heads rated tour. And sometimes people are more interested in being on a boat than they are in the history and architecture. And that's great. We just do ask, that is a courtesy to myself and the patrons around you, if you want to have any conversations, be it in person or on the phone, no matter how quiet you think you are, if alcohol is involved, you are never as quiet as you think you are. In the bow, you get all the great views. Now most of the tours are going to take place on the right-hand side of the boat, in the direction of travel. I will let you know when that's, again, not the case. So Trump International Hotel and Tower is the second tallest building in the city of Chicago and the seventh tallest in the United States of America. It is 1,362 feet tall with the spire. The architects are Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. The lead architect is Adrian Smith. He's also the lead architect for the tallest building in the world. Does anybody know what that is? The Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Then we've got this black steel skyscraper, the American Medical Association building. It's architecturally significant insofar as it's Mies van der Rohe's final building. He died in 1969. This was completed in 1971. He was an internationally acclaimed architect who moved here in the 1930s from Germany to teach architecture at the Illinois Institute of Technology, and brought with him one form of the international style of architecture, which is defined by rejecting all non-essential ornamentation. Mies's philosophy was less is more. Now, because he moved here to teach architecture, you're going to see a very strong Miesian influence throughout Chicago. A lot of international style buildings. Ironically, Bertrand Goldberg, architect of the Queen of the City Towers, we call them the corncob buildings. Goldberg was a student of Van der Rohe's. He clearly rejected the international style. His philosophy was there are no right angles in nature, so there shouldn't be any right angles in architecture. A lot of people are very curious as to how these buildings are constructed. Think of a flower. The elevator is the stem, and each condo is a pie-shaped petal. And they really are pie-shaped. The narrowest part is where you enter the unit. The widest part is the balcony. One piece of pie is a studio. 1.5 pieces of pie is a 1-bedroom. 2 pieces of pie is a 2-bedroom. Just a reminder about being a good neighbor to the people around you. We do ask if you're going to have any conversation if you go downstairs. Now, it was completed in 1967. In the 60s, people were moving from the city to the suburbs. So they had an idea for a city within a city. When Marina City Towers first opened, it had a movie theater, a bowling alley, a grocery store, a dry cleaner, a marina, a couple of restaurants, and a skating rink. Yeah, unfortunately, I had to close the skating rink a few years ago when someone accidentally skated over the edge. I'm kidding, that didn't really happen. There really was a skating rink, I just don't know why it closed. But now I have a sense of who's paying attention and how dark I can go with my humor. It works for me. Then we have the Reed Murdoch Center. Beginning in the early 1900s, the original architect is George Nimmons. He's known for his industrial work. This is a red brick masonry constructed building. It's now a converted warehouse. If you were taking this tour in the early 1900s, there's a chance you'd be bored, because all you'd be looking at is industrial buildings. This is one of the few remaining left on the river. If you look up, there's a clock tower. Lots of clock towers in Chicago. Anybody want to know why? Believe it or not, in the early 1900s, not everybody could afford an iPhone. And how else are you going to know what time it is? I can't afford one now. They're like $1,600. Then we've got this blue-green glass building with a silver steel, 300 North LaSalle, completed in 2009. The architects are Picard and Chilton, and it is LEED certified platinum. So LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. Platinum is the highest designation you can get. Lots of different features that make this building worthy of a platinum designation. It's got a rooftop garden to mitigate rainfall, and it uses river water for its cooling system. So it takes the river water in, uses to cool down the air conditioner, and then spits it out a degree or two warmer. Then we have the merchandise plant of Chicago, completed in 1931. The architects are Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. And it is Art Deco. Art Deco is defined by having a limestone facade, strong vertical lines that draw your eye up, setbacks, and geometric ornamentation. It's also the second largest building in the United States of America, the number one being the Pentagon. It has 8 miles of hallway. Now, it was originally built by Marshall Field to consolidate his warehouses. In 1945, he had to sell it due to back taxes. Joseph P. Kennedy purchased it for $13 million. In 1998, Kennedy family sold it for $575 million. So what you call a really good return on your investment. I'm glad it worked out for them. They did not sell the piece of property next to the merchandise mart. It was a parking lot that they didn't think would ever be very valuable, so they were going to throw it in on the deal in 98. Their facilities manager convinced them they should hold on to it. And as you can see, they developed it. It's an area called Wolf Point. It's an important place in Chicago's history. One of our first homesteads is here. Early 1800s, 66 people lived in Wolf Point. But they had a general store, a church, a post office, and 3 taverns, which is about on point in Chicago's tavern to population ratio. It was in one of those taverns, which probably got its name, trying to figure out what to call this area. They decided to call it their version of Native Americans called it. Native Americans called this area Chicago, which means stinky onion. Now we have River Point, including 2017, the architects are, it's a building with the arch. The architects are Ricard and Chilton. As of 2020, it is LEED certified platinum. Now we're headed onto the south branch of the Chicago River. Now one thing to keep in mind is that all the buildings that we're going to see on the right side of the boat currently, they're all built over active train tracks. And building over active train tracks, well, it introduces some interesting structural engineering conundrums. Best evidenced by the building 150 North Riverside. You might be looking at it when the architects ever even built a Lego tower. It was completed in 2017. The architects are Getchell partners. And on one side of the plot of land, you've got the river. On the other side of the plot of land, you have train tracks. So the most the base of the building could ever be is 40 feet wide. You can't build a very tall building on a tiny little base. But they figured out a way to make it work. So there are these silver things that go all the way up the side of the building. And they're called I-beams. They're made with a steel from Luxembourg. And they're the strongest I-beams in the world. And they go deep into bedrock. And on the top of the building is what's known as a mass damper system. It's 160,000 gallons of water in 4 containers on rollers. And if the computer indicates the wind is going too hard in one direction, it activates the damper system and sends it in the opposite direction as a counterbalance, or a ballast, if you will. Then we have 100 North Riverside, completed 1990. The architects are Perkins and Will. Now, Boeing bought the building in 2001. They did not buy the land. They are on a land lease. What that means is that every year they pay money to rent the land upon which the building that they own is built, which is ridiculous. It's just not the most ridiculous thing you're going to hear in this tour today. That's going to come a few more buildings down. Now, it is true Boeing relocated their headquarters to Virginia. They didn't initially sell the building. I did start to wonder, because see that sign back there? Beginning of 2024, they took it down, or it just fell out of the sky. It could go either way. But they replaced it. Actually, I read a couple weeks ago that they sold the building in September of 2025. Then we've got 2 North Riverside. It's an Art Deco building, built in the 1920s, Halbert and Ruder, the architects. Home to the very first public plaza in Chicago, as well as the Chicago Daily News, which is a newspaper. It went out of business in the 1970s, but it is where syndicated columnist, Pulitzer Prize-winning writer, and 16-inch softball Hall of Famer Mike Royko started his career. Now, this whole neighborhood is called the West Loop. It's one of the hottest neighborhoods in Chicago. You'll find some of the best restaurants in the world in the West Loop. 60, 70 years ago, it was Skid Row. All you're going to find in the West Loop then is gin joints, flop houses, and broken dreams. They got turned around when they built a series of 4 buildings called the Gateway Center. Gateway 1 is a 22-story international-style building, including 1965 Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. The architects, Bruce Graham, is the lead architect. Now, all the gateways are built over the gates for our trains. In America, we have a thing called air rights. That means people own the air above their home and above their property, so no one can ever build on top of it without their permission. Through the years, the owners of Union Station have sold their air rights to 6 different entities who have turned around and resold them multiple times. To the point where the owners of Union Station can't figure out who owns what. And it's a little confusing. It is, however, the most ridiculous thing we're going to hear on this tour today. People are buying, selling, and renting air. Gateway 2 is an identical 22-story international style building as Gateway 1, including 1967 Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. The architect, Bruce Graham, is the lead architect. Now, I've said Skidmore, Owings & Merrill a handful of times. They're an architecture firm that was established in Chicago in the 1930s, and they're prolific. And I'll give you a sense of how prolific they are. That black building is Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. That black building is Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. That white building is Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. Beyond that is a green glass building that's Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. To the left behind you, that white building is Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. That black building is Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. If you look up into the sky, there's a very tall black building with a flat roof and 2 white antennas. Any guesses who the architect is? It'd be very weird if it was anyone other than Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. A friend of mine calls this Skidmore Road. So this is the tallest building in the city of Chicago. It is the 3rd tallest in the United States of America and the 26th tallest in the world. It is 1,454 feet tall. When it was completed please no flash photography pointed in the direction of the pilot house. When it was completed in 1974, it was the tallest building in the world, and it remained the tallest building for 24 years. It was built near the world headquarters of Sears. They actually sold the building and moved to the suburbs in the 1990s. Not a lot of people realize they sold the building because the new owners let us just keep calling it the Sears Tower for over a decade. After 9/11, people didn't want to work in skyscrapers anymore, let alone one of the tallest in the world. So as their leases expired, the tenants moved out, and the building had very low occupancy. So along came the Willis Insurance Company. They're headquartered out of London. They were the brokerage for the Titanic. And they came along and they offered a way for the building to stay afloat. It's just the tip of the iceberg. By renting 3 floors in exchange for the naming rights. So they rent 3 floors. They don't own the building. And they're not the principal tenant. The principal tenant is United Airlines, with 25% of the building. Now I learned that United Airlines renegotiated their lease, and they have the naming rights option. So when Willis's lease is up, it could become United Airlines Tower, which is better, because it is Chicago's hometown airline. I mean, either way, my heart will go on. Oh, yes. Please no running on the boat. Oh, yes. It's all coming back to me now. It's called the Willis Tower. That is the official name of the building. In Chicago, we spell that S-E-A-R-S. Sears. On the 103rd floor is the observation deck. On a clear day, you can see Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. The latest addition to the observation deck is what's called the ledge, which are the retractable glass boxes that people step out on, and they look down. Now the ledge has multiple layers of glass. The top layer is a protective coating that keeps it from getting scratched. It needs to be replaced about every 5 years. The only way they know it's time to replace it is when someone steps out onto the ledge, and that layer cracks beneath their feet. It happened most recently in June of 2019. So, good luck. Again, per the safety announcement, no congregating or gathering on any of the stairs. Now, Skidmore, Owings & Merrill are the architects. Bruce Graham is the lead architect. Dr. Bosler Khan is the structural engineer. and he is considered to be Isaac Newton, a structural engineer. The building is made with what's called bundled tubular construction. It's 9 75-foot boxes that are bundled together to allow for the height and protect from the wind, making it a very, very strong building. That said, it does sway 18 inches in any direction on a windy day, which you wanted to do to avoid structural damage, like broken windows. But people who work there reported going to the bathroom on a windy day, and the toilet water is just a splish, splash in the wind, which some people think sounds gross. I, for one, remember the great toilet paper shortage of 2020. And will appreciate a bidet any way I can get one. We're going to pivot from pandemic potty humor to talk about Chicago history. I love Chicago history.
Sure.
I like to say Chicago has been Chicagoing since they started Chicago. That said, very little of it is appropriate for a river architecture tour. If you're interested in knowing more, come see me at the end of the tour, and I can make recommendations for podcasts, including that of my own. Now, we're going to go back to the fire, because I talked about the aftermath, but I didn't tell you how it started. So we know the fire started in Mrs. O'Leary's barn. Like it has it, Mrs. O'Leary had to dump her cow. The cow got a little excited, kicked over a lantern, and burned down one of the city. Okay. This is why we believe Mrs. O'Leary was hated and ran out of town. We later found out it was a made-up story by an out-of-town journalist that did sell more papers the next day. And in 1997, the City Council of Chicago voted to exonerate Mrs. O'Leary and the cow. Some people call it utter justice. So, what really caused the fire was a culmination of unfortunate circumstances. Chicago had been experiencing a drought. It got about 1.5 inches of rain in 2 months. And in fact, the entire Great Lakes region was experiencing a drought. And there were fires throughout the fall in Chicago, including one the night before. So the firefighters were exhausted, and the equipment in need of repair. Probably didn't help that everything in Chicago was hastily made out of wood. Buildings, bridges, streets, sidewalks, and pipes. And the fire started in the industrial part of town, which means warehouses. And in the path of the Great Chicago Fire, there was a warehouse that housed coal, and another one that housed matches. It got out of control pretty quickly. It's hard to imagine the Chicago look like what you see when you see pictures of the West Coast wildfires. Luckily, it started to rain about 2 days later, and that extinguished the fire. Well, we started to rebuild right away. Again, a reminder about being a good neighbor to the people around you. We do ask if you're going to have any conversation, if you can go downstairs. Now, we wanted to become a global city. We thought that the World Columbian Exposition was coming to the United States of America. And what a better way to put Chicago on the map than by hosting a World's Fair. So we sent our very best politicians to Washington, D.C., and they lobbied their little hearts out. And we ended up getting awarded the fair, which was great for us, but it made New York a little bitter. And one of their journalists referred to our politicians as windy windbags from the windy city who are full of hot air. And that is why we are called the Windy City. Not because we're the windiest city in America, which we are not, but because our politicians are full of hot air. I find this to be very unfair. If you know anything about Chicago politics and Illinois politics as a whole, we are known for having some of the most honest, above-board politicians you could ever hope to vote for. While they're under indictment. Now the fair ended up being one of the most important events in Chicago's history, starting with Daniel Burnham, who planned what's famously known as the White City. It was on the south side in Jackson Park. It was comprised of 250 temporary buildings made out of material, a little bit like drywall. He got so interested in city planning that he went on to be a city planner, and he planned many notable cities, most importantly his hometown of Chicago. And we are considered to be one of the best planned cities in the world. If you're enjoying our expansive boulevard, you can thank Daniel Burnham. The landscape architect is a guy named Frederick Law Olmsted. He's a bit of a rock star in architect circles. He designed Central Park, Prospect Park, the entire park system of Louisville, Kentucky, and the list goes on and on. Now, Ferris highlighted the greatest innovations of the day. Think of it as the TikTok of its time. So, what was trending in 1893? Well, the previous World Fair was held in Paris. Does anybody know the centerpiece of the Paris Fair? Eiffel Tower. Burnham and the gang, they wanted to out Eiffel. So they found their very own structural engineering marvel called the Ferris wheel. That's right. Very first Ferris wheel in the world was right here in Chicago. It was over 200 feet tall, made partially out of wood. It had 60 gondolas, which held 30 people each, and it took an hour to get around. Other innovations include juicy fruit gum, Cracker Jack, the zipper, a little thing called electricity, shockingly, that stayed true, and Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. Initially just called Pabst beer. They entered into a contest at the fair, and it received a ribbon. So they renamed themselves, so we would know that they were an award-winning beer. If you've ever had PBR, you might be wondering, how bad was all the beer? But this is the beer that won. It was a participation ribbon. All of the beers got a ribbon. So the fair lasted for 6 months. 27 million people came, which is roughly half the population of the United States of America at the time. And it turned a profit. First World Fair to ever turn a profit. So they decided to have another one in 1933 called the Century of Progress, which is how they were called the museum campus. It's redefined by the Shed Aquarium, the Outdoor Planetarium, the Field Museum, and Soldier Field. Now, we're going parallel to the Riverwalk here, and it's divided by bays or rooms, as we call the areas between each of the bridges. This particular bay is our Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Along the wall is a plaque that lists the names of all of the fallen soldiers who are residents of Illinois. Now we're going parallel to East Wacker Drive. There's also Lower East Wacker Drive and Lower East Wacker Drive. There's also North, South, and West Wacker Drives. If you're directionally challenged like myself, we recommend you avoid them at all costs. You're going to get lost. It's been described as a portal to disappointment. And I want to draw your focus onto the left side of the boat for a moment. We have the Wrigley building, which I've already told you about. Then across the street from that is a neo-Gothic tower called the Tribune Tower. Completed in 1925, the architects are Hood and Howells. And it's inspired by European cathedrals. So if you look up, there are flying buttresses. In European cathedrals, the flying buttresses are laid there. The Tribune Tower, they are merely ornamental. The Tribune moved out, and the building is now condominiums. I was thinking about it, but my commute would be too short. I use my commute to improve on my tour. Oh, and they range from 700 out to 8 mil. Pocket change. Back on the right side, we've got this tall blue glass building. The kids on Reddit call it the Wiggly Building. Its real name is the St. Regis of Chicago. It was completed in 2020. The architect is Studio Gang. The lead architect is Genie Gang. And that is the tallest building in the world with a female architect as the lead architect. It's also overall the third tallest building in the city of Chicago. It is apartment, condo, hotel, retail, and office space. If you look up towards the top, it looks like it's not quite finished. That's called the blow-through block. The building didn't pass the wind shearing test. So they left that open like a vent for the air to blow through. Without it, the top of the building could break off. So that's the thing. Then we got this red brick building, the Hyatt Regency. South of that is a white building with black vertical windows. It's the Aon Center. It's also been called the Standard Oil Building and the Amico Building. And it's originally clad in Italian Carrara marble, which is some of the most expensive marble in the world. It's what Michelangelo used. So to cut down on building costs, they trimmed it too thin. And it didn't hold up well during Chicago winters. They eventually had to take it all off and reclad it in North Carolina granite. It cost about $80 million, which just goes to show you can't take marble for granted. I don't tell that one very often, but I'm feeling bolder. It takes some stones. I have a whole slate of jokes, but I don't want to bore you. All right, we are on the Chicago River at its deepest point. It's 22 feet deep, and it used to flow into Lake Michigan, which was and is our source of drinking water. In the 1800s, we treated this river like a toilet. We used it to discard all of our industrial, animal, and human waste. You can Google pictures of chickens walking across the Chicago River. In 1885, we had a torrential rainstorm with very strong winds coming out of the west. And the concern was that the wind was going to push the river water 2 miles off the shores of Lake Michigan into our drinking water intake. And then we would have a problem. Luckily, that didn't happen, but we knew we needed to do something. So we formed the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. If you're not from Chicago, you might think you're going to hear a really inspiring story on how we were pioneers in cleaning up our water. No, I'm going to tell you how to make our problem someone else's problem. Between the South Branch of the Chicago River and the Des Plaines River, there's a portage. We dug a canal 35 feet deep, because gravity says water goes to the deepest point. We named it the Sanitation and Ship with a P canal. On January 2nd, 1900, we opened the canal and we reversed the flow of the Chicago River. So now it flows down the South Branch, down the canal, down the Des Plaines River, down the Illinois River, down the Mississippi River, all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. We could take this boat to New Orleans if we wanted to, but I have to go home and write a podcast script about corruption in Cook County courts in the 1970s. I digress, we got sued. First by St. Louis, because their source of drinking water was and is the Mississippi River, and they were concerned we were going to contaminate their drinking water. They brought this all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, where the case got dismissed for 2 reasons. Number one, we could not prove the contamination originated in Chicago, and number two, they were doing the same thing with their waste. Don't worry, they got even with us. They bottled up that gross, disgusting river water and sold it back to us in the form of Budweiser. We then got sued by Michigan, Indiana, and Wisconsin. They claimed we were draining Lake Michigan. We lost that lawsuit, so the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District built the Chicago Harbor Lock. The lock was built for one reason and one reason only, and that's to regulate the amount of water that comes into the Chicago River from Lake Michigan. Because of the lock, Lake Michigan is now a few feet higher than the Chicago River, so every time the lock opens, about 800,000 gallons of Lake Michigan water comes in. Over here, we have this building with a curving black glass curtain wall. Lake Point Tower condominiums, including 1968, the architects of Shipwright and Heinrich. There's a rumor that Oprah Winfrey lived there. Oprah never lived there. She might have started the rumor herself because she lived at Water Tower Place and she just didn't want people to know where she lived. Across the street is Navy Pier, built in 1916, with originally called Municipal Pier number 2. There never was a number 1. They were going to build that later on the south side. We decided we didn't want any commercial boating, so they moved everything and renamed it Navy Pier after World War I to honor our veterans. World War II, we did our part. It was a naval training facility. Then it was University of Illinois at Navy Pier. Then it was empty for about 30 years. In 1995, they completed a $255 million renovation. And it's one of the top tourist destinations in the state. There's a lot to do. We've got the Ferris wheel. The gondolas are enclosed and climate controlled. There's a Tony Award-winning Shakespeare theater. Lots of places to eat and drink at various price points, including Austro, the largest rooftop bar in the United States of America. They opened a hotel about 5 years ago. They have fireworks every Wednesday and Saturday, Memorial Day through Labor Day. And there's the Chicago Children's Museum. I haven't been there. I assume that it's displays of children through the ages. With that, we're going to take a brief pause. It's last call for the heads, last call for the bathrooms. So if you think you're going to use it, they'll be closed by the time we get to that. Also, we're going to position the boat parallel to the bridge, give everybody an opportunity to have a postcard perfect picture of the skyline, and then we'll finish the tour. who was mayor of Chicago from 1955 to 1976. And not only did he admit to reading it, he claimed it was his favorite book of all time. Now, we have this fountain here, Centennial Fountain, built to celebrate 100 years of the formation of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. And in the seawall, there's a pyramid with a spigot. Every hour, on the hour, for 5 minutes, it spits out an arch of water that goes all the way across the Chicago River. The idea being boats would be able to go underneath it and not get wet. That's not how gravity works. It took me a really long time to appreciate the irony of the fact that it celebrates an entity best known for reversing the flow of the Chicago River, which is something they did based on their understanding of gravity. Then they have a fountain in their honor designed by somebody who doesn't understand gravity. We've got the Sheraton Hotel. It's one of the larger hotels here in the city of Chicago. That is a banquet space the size of a football field with unobstructed views. Perfect place to go if you want to have a nice, intimate seated dinner for you and 1,000 of your closest friends. It's also very popular with politicians. You can have a nice, intimate seated dinner for them and 1,000 of their closest donors. Then we've got the building with the wall on top. That's the Hotel Intercontinental, built in 1919. Walter Ashwager, the architect. In architectural terms, that ball is called an onion dome. The building was a Medina men's club. They're known for Arabic art. We don't get to see a lot of Arabic art here, so if you want to check it out, there's a Starbucks in the lobby. Directly in front of us is the DeSable Bridge. It's one of 37 best wood climbing bridges. That's the bridge that opens in the center. Most of any city in the United States of America, and second in the world, only to Amsterdam. We only open them on Wednesdays and Saturdays in the spring and in the fall at scheduled times. So the way it works, if your boat can't fit under one of the bridges, it goes on Lake Michigan through the summer. If you go north, that's connects Michigan Avenue. If you go north, that's called the Magnificent or the Mag Mile. So you're going to find elite shopping, Gucci, Louis Vuitton. Northeast base, that's where our first non-native settlers, John Baptiste DeSable, set up his trading post. Lake Michigan used to come all the way to Michigan Avenue. Anything east of Michigan Avenue is landfill from the Great Chicago Fire. If you go south about 2 blocks, you're going to find Millennium Park. The last thing we're going to talk about is the Chicago flag. Second flag in, and I just had to break. We love our flag here. Everything on it is symbolic. The 2 blue stripes represent our bodies of water, Lake Michigan, and the Chicago River. The 3 white stripes represent the land masses divided by the Chicago River, the north side, south side, and west side. The 4 stars represent important historic events. First star, 4th year board. Second star, Great Chicago Fire. Third star, World Columbian Exposition, the first World Fair. And the 4th star, Century of Progress, the second World Fair. If you want to remember, it's the 4 F's, Fort, Fire, Fair, Fair. Additionally, each point on the star is symbolic, but I'm not terribly great at memorizing. You're going to have to look it up on your own. There's a 5th star we would have added if Chicago had chosen to host the 2016 Summer Olympics. That big one to Rio de Janeiro. Some people feel we should have added it with the Cubs on the World Series, which would have had a 5th F, finally. The White Sox fans would become a 5th. Alright, we're getting ready to approach the dock and do an adult beverage. It's time to play the Liddell drinking game, chug it or chuck it. This boat might go to New Orleans. We are not in New Orleans. Can't bring the booze off the boat. We ask that everybody take a seat, remain seated through the entire docking process until the ramp is down. From time to time, we might kiss the dock. We would hate for anyone to get injured. Additionally, in order for you to disembark, we've got to open that gate back there.